Honestly, I don't really like talking about Black Lives Matter. I made the one video about it a little while back ago, and if you saw it, you can probably hear in my voice that I really, really despise the movement and most of the lies that come from it. And with the recent thing happened a couple of weeks ago, you could say, a couple of different shootings and different terrorist attacks. I've seen an influx of videos coming talking about, you know, crime between black people and multiple people ranting about Black Lives Matter and just kind of saying the same thing. I can't really make a video about Black Lives Matter that would be insightful or any different from anything anyone else has already said or can already see, or many other people can find things that are a lot more researched when it comes to Black Lives Matter and what has been going on with them recently. So I can't really do that, or I could, but it would be nowhere near as good as the many other videos that other people have made on the topic. And I'm really making this video because someone asked me to. They thought it would be a good idea to hear me chat about Black Lives Matter again, but I honestly don't know what else is left to say about it other than it's a terrible movement. People should move away from it. Probably one of the best solutions, honestly, would be to remember that we're individuals and remember to actually strive to treat each other well, I think. And I mean, it's easier said than done, and it sounds simple, but apparently it's not very easy. But I think it's the only real thing that we can do right now, because what I'm beginning to see is I know a lot of people continue to say that race relations are the worst they've ever been, and I don't think that's true. I think that's a little histrionic. It's not like you can pick someone off the street, light them on fire and sell their body parts. I mean, it's not. Race relations haven't regressed to such a degree, and in fact, I don't even think regressive would even be the correct word to use here in particular, seeing as it's a bunch of black people now browbeating white people and telling them that they're terrible, horrible oppressors, and that's not really something that's ever been seen in history. It's usually been you're terrible, horrible, non-human. That's why you're being treated badly, not people really punishing you for the actions your ancestors have done. So it's not really regressive. That's not really the correct word to use there, but the fact remains, it's not good. And I think one thing, and this is really the whole point of the video, I'm thinking, I've seen some trends, and I guess I just want to make this video to say, hey, there's some things that we need to remember when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to race relations, or when it comes to talking about these different social justice topics. And one of the first things is we need to remember that black people are a hive mind. It's a funny thing to say, but I've seen some comments on different videos where people will talk about black people and say that we all view different micro things as racism, or we all seem to agree that all of our lives are suck or terrible, and that we all think the same, and that's just far removed from the truth. I feel kind of silly even having to put this in a video and saying, hey, we got to remember that I don't even think most black people, let alone a significant fraction, support Black Lives Matter, and I think it's very important to remember, that we all don't agree on the same thing. Black people are just that, we're people. And I think I've seen a lot of people, again, splatter this huge amorphous, just blacks or black people all seem to think that we're all oppressed, or that we're all under some sort of oppression, and that's just not the case. And I think one thing that people need to remember is that we don't all agree on the same thing. We don't all like Black Lives Matter, obviously. Again, I think only like 1/3, not probably even less than 1/3 of all black people even support or even like or even think about the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's one thing we should remember and keep in mind when discussing Black Lives Matter. I've just seen a bunch of people, again, completely overgeneralize the amount of people that actually support Black Lives Matter. I mean, they're loud people, and I can understand why you would think that would be the case, but the truth of the matter is, most black people, they aren't supporting this. So let's not treat all black people as if this is the case, or even a significant fraction, or even generalize. There should be no generalization, no huge generalization of black people who think this way, or who think that they're really in a great degree of trouble. Here's another thing I think we need to remember. And this goes to the people of Black Lives Matter who actually support, who might watch this video, and everyone. We need to remember two important things about the police. And one thing, and this is the reason why I personally don't like the police. I mean, and you'll see why I'm about to say that. I have to preface this, and you'll see why in a second. It's obviously the nature of what they are and what they do, but I still don't like it. And that thing is, the police, they don't exist to protect and serve us. They exist to uphold the law, you know. So they're not going to always put the lives of people, you know, before upholding the law. They're not always going to think of preserving life, and it sucks. But the reality of the police, or the way they exist now, is not to keep us all safe. It is to uphold the law. It's built in there. There's a huge power imbalance with the police. It's very hard to deal with corrupt police. I mean, the only people who can deal with them are, you know, are politicians who are even higher than them, or other police officers. You know, civilians can't do that. And again, that's the nature of the police. They're supposed to, they obviously have to have more power than civilians in order to order them around, or they have the authority, you know. And I think that's one reason why the police bother me, is the fact that a lot of them, or when they become unethical, there's not much we as the civilians can do. We're gonna have to keep that in mind, you know, when dealing with the police. I think there's a lot of criticism that can be laid on police, but you gotta remember, I think, and then there's that, I have to then stop and say this. One very important thing we have to remember is the fact that police are still people, you know. And I think a lot of people who are spreading around a bunch of anti-police rhetoric still need to stop and understand that they are still people, you know. They are still human beings. They still have thoughts and feelings and all of that, and we shouldn't pretend that they're not. We shouldn't pretend that they transcend the nature of you know, human existence, you know, because they have a badge, and they too should understand that. Again, of course, that's the nature of the police, is to have authority over us and have more power than us, and I don't like that, because they can become corrupt. But you know, it is what it is, you know. That's just me personally, but we got to remember those two important things, man. The police, and I think that's that's probably one of the biggest issues with the police right now, is the fact that they don't serve and protect us as civilians. And I think that's a huge part of the conversation that just gets lost when we're talking about the police brutality, or the fact that people have been killed by the police. I mean, accident or not, whatever the reason may be, you know, the police, they should, I think they should honestly be always working towards preserving life, rather than people, you know. I think way too many police officers, I don't know if they're trained to do this, or if this is just, you know, reflex or instinct, but I think a lot of them really move to force rather quickly. And I think that, more than anything else, you know, white, black, Hispanic, it doesn't really fucking matter. That is what's getting a bunch of people killed by the police, is the fact that their instinctual, or their reaction, is a lot of force. And not very many of them, at least from what we're seeing, is a nice, calm, cool, collected person, you know. I mean, and think about that. In those situations with the calm, cool, collected police officers, it usually never amounts to that. So I think that's what we gotta remember, you know. The police, there is an imbalance of power, obviously built into the nature of what they are, but they're still people. And I've seen a lot of people seem to talk about an us versus them mentality when it comes to the police, and you gotta remember, I mean, they're still human beings. You know, they still have families, and they're still scared, and they still deal with all of that. So I guess you gotta remember to, I guess it all comes down to, remember to treat people as individuals. You know, you have to keep that in mind with these different topics and these different conversations, that we're all still human beings, you know, and we still all have, you know, our different perspectives on life, and things aren't always as simple as an us versus them. Things aren't always black and white, you know. And I guess the final thing I have to say is to remember, to keep in mind, I guess, when it comes to this conversation about Black Lives Matter, or when it comes to race relations in America, is to not fall into the trap or the pitfalls of, I don't know the best way to put this. I say the pitfalls of, no, I don't want to call it flat out racism, but I mean, it does sort of lean towards that way of actual racism. And what I mean by that is, again, generalizing and treating wholesale groups of people in one particular way. I guess being prejudiced but the wholesale treatment of any particular group of people based on the actions of a few. I say remember to not fall into that trap and to make sure that you don't become that person. And it might sound patronizing or it sounds silly that I have to say this, but again, I'm seeing a lot of different talk. I've especially seen a lot of people for some odd reason. And it's pretty interesting to me and kind of funny, but I've seen a lot of people kind of start talking about how black people are more prone to committing crimes, or I've seen a lot of people throw around the fact that the average IQ of black people is 85 and the average IQ of a white person is like 100 or 105 or something like that, and they kind of just throw it out there, but there's never any sort of solution. There's never really anything relevant when those so-called facts are brought up, and I don't really know so much about how the average IQ of black or white people, and I don't think it fucking matters when it all comes down to it. When it comes to committing more crimes and like more homicides, that's absolutely true. That more black people are certainly killing each other. That's true. There's no way around that fact. But it's always brought up, and there's no real solution. There's nothing ever really relevant to actually fixing the problem. It's just always said that it happens and that we're not allowed to talk about it. But I mean, we are allowed to talk about it. I mean, or maybe we're not allowed on Facebook, or not allowed, or people don't want to hear the conversation. But I mean, what's the point of bringing it up if all you're doing is bringing it up for the sake of bringing it up? You know, what's the point of and I've seen this with a lot of white nationalists too. Maybe I'll have to talk about that one day. But where again, like I said, they'll bring up the statistic, or they'll bring up all those different facts about black people, and they don't ever say anything that's going to help balance out the problem. They just kind of saying it to say, hey, look, I mean, this is a terrible environment black people are in, you know, and we need to have a conversation about it. But I mean, it always stops there. And I've seen this with a couple of videos, but no one is ever actually saying, hey, you know, let's encourage black women to, like, I don't know, pick better men. You know, let's encourage men to be better people. Let's actually encourage a stable, functioning relationship between men and women, and let's start encouraging people to raise their children better. Let's actually start talking about, well, what are the best ways to raise your children? What are the best ways? What are the best things to do? You know, and I don't see enough talk about that. I just see a lot of people identifying and pointing out problems, and then saying that they're not allowed to talk about these problems, but there's no solution. And I think that's one thing that we have to remember. I mean, when at the end of the day, guys, I mean, that's what we should be striving for, are solutions. It's not enough to simply sit here and say there's a problem in the black community. And by the way, you know, I know we see it a lot more with black people, but I mean, it happens with white people too. It's a person problem, or if anything, it's a social economical problem. But you know, we're just talking about black people today. It's not enough to simply say that we have problems and not actually discuss them or chat about them. We actually have to start doing something. We actually have to start in our personal lives changing the way we think and react. And I guess that's the last thing I need to say. I don't really have much to say today other than that. I know someone wanted me to talk about Black Lives Matter, but I've kind of left it all in that video. I hate the movement. I don't like talking about it. And other people have made better videos about Alton Sterling, or whatever his name was. I forgot. I'm terribly terrible person. But yeah, I know, just a lot of and I'm sorry I don't have anything more profound to say, but honestly, like I said, I don't like this topic. I don't like talking about death. I don't like talking about police shootings. I don't like talking about this stuff. It kind of makes me sad. But again, we need solutions. I think that's the most important. It's not enough to problem, you know, it's not enough to point out problems anymore. I think now we as individuals, we're going to actually have to start trying to make a change and start trying to do things differently and start talking to each other differently, and remember not to get segregated. You know, I've seen way too many people focus on actually splitting up and being segregated rather than actually coming together and fixing a problem. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to keep in mind and remember when it comes to all of these horrible things that have happened recently. So that being said, man, I certainly hope you guys got something out of today's video. I mean, I know I've been rambling and all over the place, but I certainly hope you've got something. And if you did, man, go ahead and click that like button. Hey, man, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.